I'm Liz Cully. I'm so excited to be here. We were just sort of talking. This is the first time I've done anything in public in quite some time. So it's really, I feel very grateful to be here. So we're going to go down the line, and everyone, if you don't mind saying your name, your preferred pronoun, and what you do, that would be great.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lee Wakeford. My pronouns are he, him, his. I've been a yoga instructor with Alo now for about 6 years and in Los Angeles for the past 10. From a theater background before, so a big old ham. But I took a little bit of a turn during the pandemic and am now studying to become a clinical psychologist. Yeah, there's some fun programs out there. So this one is a specialization in spirituality and depth. So just asking more questions about how the mind works, you know?
Love that. My name's Luigi Aldon. Hi, everybody. My preferred pronouns are they, them, slay, slem. I would also say, I am the co-founder as well as chief creative officer of Spudge Wellness, which is a company, spiritual wellness company that I founded with my co-founder, Lar, who's taking pictures of me currently. Previous to that, I was an instructor at SoulCycle for 5 years. And then before that, I worked in branding and marketing for companies like Lululemon and ClassPass. And that's kind of what brought me here today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mel Douglas. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a yoga instructor and the founder of the Black Women's Yoga Collective, which is a wellness organization that's focused on increasing accessibility to wellness, especially for Black women, but for really everyone. And that starts with yoga, but also spreads out to just all wellness tools, mindfulness, meditation, and just all kinds of healing practices. So that's what I do.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bentley Fozzie. My preferred pronouns are she, her. I am a yoga teacher. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I work for Alo on the marketing team, specifically the community team.
What a lineup. So today we're going to talk about a lot of things, but definitely mindful movement. And I'd love for everybody to talk about how mindful movement empowers you and maybe what kind of mindful movement is your favorite. Sorry, I went off script, but I'm curious.
It makes it personal. Well, I want to say I was a dancer to begin with, and so I was introduced to yoga as a form of calming the mind, connecting to the body, searching for the spirit. The way that informs who I am is I think mindful movement allows for you to get closer to an expression of your authentic self just because it quiets the noise. It brings you into a deeper space of connection with your own physical self, which is what we are here on this planet, you know? And the ability to share that with other people and give them that clue, whether they know it or not, allows for them to tap into that sense of a greater authentic expression. So yoga is what I know, swimming is what I know, dancing is what I know. Anything that kind of gets me into that meditative state is something that I consider mindful movement for me.
I was thinking about kind of what mindful movement just is and my definition of that. And I think for me, kind of making that distinction between what working out is, what mindful movement is really important. At Smudge, it's a spiritual wellness company. We sell crystals. We talk about intention setting a lot. And I think that's really the difference there for me. What makes movement mindful is setting intention. And, you know, this is a Pride panel, obviously, and we're all up here queer or identify as queer. And growing up queer, you kind of are always told, like, you have to be a certain way, you have to present this way, you have to love this way. And I think the beautiful thing about intentional and mindful movement is that you kind of get to choose how you show up. And you get to choose how you feel that day, physically, mentally, spiritually. And I think that is the difference, and that is the kind of a key. When I'm like searching for a movement practice, that's what I'm looking for. I'm wanting to tap into that, like you said, authentic self. Also a student of yoga, never a teacher. I've always wanted to be a teacher, so maybe you can help me with that later. And yeah, I think that's kind of how mindful movement empowers me.
I had like a really good answer, like right here, and then it left immediately as soon as it was my turn. No, I feel like developing my yoga practice and just connecting with that sort of mindful movement was the first time that I really practiced taking up space, like in a clear and intentional way, like hearing the talk in class about taking up space on your mat, you know, like seeing your mat as like a space that's all yours to take up, and then like the different things that come with, you know, developing my yoga practice. I feel like I first sort of learned how to take up space loudly there, and then I took it off the mat and started taking up space like outside in the world in a bigger way. Whereas as a queer person who's also Black and Latina and a woman, the world is usually not suggesting I take up a lot of space. Like that's not what I was predominantly taught to do, and I was like more so really taught to shrink myself, to kind of try harder to fit into the box of what like everyone else looks like and is like and loves like and all of that stuff. So just being able to learn like, oh, I can like take up this space, and then more than that, I can actually claim like a lot of this space for myself, and like having that be okay is what movement helped me really connect with.
I love that. For not remembering what you were going to say, that was pretty powerful.
That was pretty solid. That was solid.
So mindful movement to me, obviously, is yoga. I teach yoga and I practice yoga, and I started practicing yoga 7 years ago. And like many people, I found yoga and I enjoyed it because it was physically demanding, right? You're sweating, you're, you know, stretching, doing crazy poses and all this stuff. And that's usually what gets a lot of people on their mat for the first time, right? It's kind of that gym essence, right? It's still a workout, but about 6 months into it is when everything started to shift for me. And at the time in my life, I knew that I wasn't living my truest self. I wasn't being my most authentic self. And one day in Shavasana, I laid there and with my eyes closed, I just started sobbing. Like the tears just came pouring out of my eyes, and I kind of had that moment. I was like, what is happening? This is crazy. And I realized at that moment, it opened up the pathway to realize that yoga is so much more than just a physical practice. That's absolutely beautiful, but it is such a spiritual connection, and it's such a place to grow mentally and find clarity. And I knew from that moment that I had to make a shift in my life, and I knew that I wasn't living my truest self, and it really forced me. It forced me to peel back all the layers, all the things that I thought I knew about myself, but I knew weren't true. And from then on, I had a different appreciation and a different connection to my practice, and that's what keeps me coming back. It was that moment, was like that divine moment in my life that said, this is not who you are, you know who you're supposed to be, and it gave me like the power and the courage to make that change. So
I love that, and that's a great segue to the next. We can clap for that. I'm like, I love that. You know, that's a great segue into talking about how mindful movement can create a sense of belonging and can create really a community, right? I'd love to hear from you all if you agree with that, or, you know, because you've all kind of touched on it, which is interesting, right? Like, how do you think being mindful in your movement as a queer person helped you feel like you belong to something, even if you're being quiet on your mat, right? Do you feel like those moments brought you to a better sense of belonging to something bigger, or had breakthroughs, etc.?
It's a journey, right? And that part of it never ends. I myself never led with my queerness because of what I believed that meant up until now, and continue to work through. But I love what both Mel and Bentley mentioned about taking up space. and what Luigi mentioned about intentionality and how are we showing up to establish that community, to establish that shared experience. I was able to be myself in front of people, which performance on the stage never necessarily allowed me to do because I was always playing someone else or being someone else. And so having the stage of sharing mindful movement and intentionality and this idea of feeling good in front of people naturally brought out my queerness, and that is what I also attracted in the students and the people that found me, right? I'm still a little trepidatious of having my queerness be the thing that leads. And that's a wonderful thing to realize, because I think the awareness is where the value lies, right? Just being like, okay, that's where I'm at, and that's okay. That's fine, nor does it need to be any other way. But I'm so inspired by those who do, and who lunge forward with a louder message and a louder voice, because that in turn gives me permission to be more authentic. So yeah, I'm always honored and humbled by those who live so freely, because I'm still learning what that means.
Believe it or not, I was a biology major in college.
Oh,
So I'm not
love that.
I'm not just a gorgeous pair of legs, you know. I'm a smart cookie up in here. I'm just kidding. I forgot all of it, honestly. But anyway, so I leave college and I immediately start working in a lab. And you know, I don't know if you know about labs, but they're not like super queer spaces. And something really shifted, and I could only tell that what it was like the type of people that were in this space, in the fitness space, in the wellness space. It was almost like it was like a party every day for my queerness, you know? And I found myself for the first time leading with my queerness and being celebrated in a professional setting for being queer. Maybe a little bit of it maybe was tokenization, right? But at that age, I was like, I love all the attention, give it to me. And then to move into a space teaching, like in the teaching space, which I had never done previous to that, to be almost, the queerness almost became a strength of mine. And now that's what I see it as. And it's a really beautiful thing that these communities can come together and bolster you, and not only that, but look at your queerness as a real strength, a power. You know, I came out as non-binary at the beginning of this year, and the first people I told, and my best friends actually, were people that were my students in class. And previous to that, even all, you know, any trauma that I've had through my life, I've shared with all of them. Like, they've become my family in many ways, because, you know, this is a story for another time, but I don't really have a great relationship with my family currently, and so to have that kind of support, the kind of support like a family, through people that you were sweating next to and with and on, so many fluids, all the fluids on them, is really a beautiful thing. And I really think it's so unique to the fitness space. Something really carnal about like sweating next to someone and like feeling like you're a part of the act of movement. It's a really beautiful thing. Anyway, I don't remember what the question was, but I think I answered it.
I don't really either.
Did I answer
I
it?
think yes, it had to do with being queer and
Okay,
belonging.
cool.
Yeah, you were in the theme. You were
cool.
good.
Cool.
I feel like I have always been aware that movement can build community in different ways. So I'm a first-generation American, and my family is Grenadian, so they're from a Caribbean island, and movement is something that's very sort of unifying for Caribbean people. Like, we have a certain style of dancing and a certain style of music and stuff like that. And I was always very aware of how that sort of was like a little community within my like larger community of then like American surroundings. So knowing that when I like came out, which I came out when I was 16, and I almost right away dived into like, I'm from New York, so I almost right away dived into like the New York sort of like ball voguing house scene, which I feel really lucky now. I had no idea that that's what was like
Slay.
that I was doing that, but I didn't personally like Vogue or anything like that, but I like would go to the balls and all of that stuff, and I could very clearly see how the movement of that community tied them together and helped them feel connected to each other and like a greater sense of belonging in a way. And like being around that energy as a queer person, I think helped me feel really comfortable earlier on with expressing myself as a queer person and like the parts of my identity that like do take a little bit more to put out there because I'm a cisgender like femme presenting woman, so like I kind of have to be like, guys, I'm gay, like I have to just tell
Same girl,
everyone.
same.
It's really pretty annoying but it's like just being around those people, like the Vogue community and like the ball community. Like I was a part of a house when I was 18 and things like that were very movement based and very movement focused. And it's like a different kind, but I definitely feel like it helped me then translate that to like bigger expression across the board for like the part of me that is queer.
I love that. I want to speak specifically to yoga communities, both as a practitioner and as a teacher. So for me, yoga, if you don't know, means literally to unite. It means to bring together. And that should apply to anyone and everyone. So any person that is coming to their yoga mat in any yoga space should be welcomed no matter what, according to literally what yoga means. And sometimes that happens and sometimes that doesn't happen. And it's sad to say that that doesn't happen 100% of the time in the yoga community, and it should, because it's literally what it's designed, it's what it's created to do. And so I've had positive and negative experiences, but I think that like anything in life, there's always room for improvement and growth. But to me, having a yoga community should be a safe space for anyone and everyone who wants to come to practice no matter what. But I want to kind of touch, Lee, on what you said. As a teacher, I don't necessarily lead with my queerness, and I think it is culminated in the fact that when I literally came out of my yoga teacher training was when I decided to get a divorce. So I hadn't even come out yet. Now I'm trying to find my teacher voice, which for anybody who teaches knows that takes quite some time to figure out just how you teach, right? The method that you teach, how you speak to your class, the messages that you want to convey. And I felt I was just at this weird juxtaposition where I was like, I don't even know who I am, so how am I supposed to lead people, whoever they are, wherever path they come from. And that was really challenging for me to break through, and it took a really long time. And like you said, it's a journey. It's a lifelong journey. It's going to be a part of my journey forever. But I can only hope that anyone that's walking into any yoga space would feel welcome. And I think that it's really important that we use our voice to make sure that is what the experience that people have.
I'm so in awe of instructors, and teaching. I just think it's so hard to do. Fun fact, I have my full Pilates certification. I was the worst Pilates instructor you've ever had in your life. I can't explain how bad I was. I'm like, I don't know, articulate your spine. Bad. I was so bad. I'm a great student though, but how, so you've all led classes, you all kind of touched on that in regards to belonging. What is the difference, or how do you transition between being mindful in teaching, but then also being mindful when you're practicing and being led? Do you kind of have to switch gears? Do you feel a big difference?
Yes. Yes is the answer to that. Big difference. I find it increasingly precious to be able to, I'll speak to my own practice first, to show up for myself by showing up to the mat for me. As a teacher, oftentimes many of us are in the helping professions, are in the taking care of others' professions, are fully putting on someone else's oxygen mask before you put on your own. And so it is a practice to show up for yourself. And because of that sacredness and that reminder of what it is that you provide for other people, there's a crossover and the similarity to what it is like, but there's a different responsibility. It's much harder for me to do for myself than it is to do for others. And so I get some of the benefit by being in front of a group of people and sharing what I know. But if I do not show up for myself that way, I've got nothing to give. And so that continues to be a balance to find, because as life moves on, like, there are different challenges that are going to pull you and tug you in different directions. And we were just talking before this idea of living so many lives. So just knowing what intention you're putting forth and what you are giving to yourself so you can fully show up for those others who might be showing up to their mat for the first time. It is a massive responsibility. And it's definitely, I was like the biggest student in the class is the teacher. You learn so much from all of your students. I think that's where I'm going to wrap that one up.
Okay.
Before I keep circling and spiraling.
And that's kind of all the things that I was thinking as well. But I think to add to that, I would say I offer a unique perspective because I'm no longer teaching. And so...
Is that hard?
It's hard.
Like,
it
do you
is.
go into those Barry's classes and you want to correct form? Tell me the truth.
Do I write notes about it in my notes app? Yeah, I
You've
do.
known each other a while
I don't
now,
show
Luigi.
anyone, but I just...
Is it hard to turn off, though, now that you're out of it?
So I think that's where the retraining comes in.
Sure.
You are, as an instructor, and I speak for myself, you are so used to kind of just holding space for others all the time. And you get a lot out of that. I personally got a lot out of that in a different way. But to relearn what it means to hold space for yourself, to charge up again, it's really a beautiful thing. So I know for a lot of us who are instructors or are instructors, it can be really difficult because you can't turn it off, like you said. But it is so necessary. And the other thing I would add to that is also, you can get really burned out on the idea that, like, you're holding space for all these people all the time. I'd be lying if I didn't say at some points there was, like, resentment that built up. But then I, as a student, come in and I look at these teachers and I take these classes, and the way that these spaces have become a sanctuary for me in kind of the hardest times, like, I would say even now, like, it's hard to not bring this up, but, like, the state of the world that we're in right now, the violence that's happening in the world, the shootings, et cetera, like, I go to these spaces, these fitness spaces, to my teachers for that safety. And I think, like, I just want to convey that message to you guys who are teaching right now, that it's just so important and it's so appreciated, at least for me. I have lots of personalities, so that's like a lot of people.
Yeah, I feel like I know what the question is, but
How,
it's like...
is it hard for you to
Yes,
turn off?
as a teacher.
And then
Got it. I'm back.
what are the differences between... No, it's okay. I mean, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I mean, we're all over the place. And
It's
I
being
threw
filmed,
that
it's
one
being
out.
filmed.
I went out of order. But yeah, the differences between teaching and participating.
Definitely, it is completely different. Like, it's a completely different space for me when I'm practicing versus when I'm teaching. And I take my own personal practice very seriously because I have come to really accept that if I don't take care of myself, like, I can't help anyone else. Like, nothing that I do for other people will really have an impact if I'm not doing anything for myself at the end of the day. And also recognizing as a teacher or like a person who does take holding space very seriously and creating safe spaces very seriously, like recognizing that I can't heal for anyone, I can't make anyone happy. Like all I can really do is, or what I can best do is lead by example. So I can take steps to feel good in my life and then share that with people when I teach and encourage them to take steps to feel good in their lives and like know that it'll be different and know that it will like look different for all of us, but that there's like a path to feeling good that's available to all of us. And so that's kind of what I try to really lead with in my teaching. And because of my organization, I do teach a lot to people who are just connecting with yoga or movement or wellness practices. And so it looks very different. Like I do hot power vinyasa yoga. Like I need to feel like maybe I might die, but then I don't. That's like what I like to do for my own practice, and that's never the class that I teach because it's rare that that's the audience that I have. And like I could teach like that, like just give the people what I really enjoy, and then they wouldn't actually connect with probably what my intention is. So yeah, it's like completely two different spaces for me, but I feel like keeping it that way, like keeping my practice and my teaching practice so like distinct has helped me not feel like burnt out or feel like over responsible for the people that I want to connect with, because it is really challenging to help people who haven't connected maybe with movement practices or with yoga or with breathing, with those things. There are a lot of barriers that you have to get past, and you can't, like, it's yoga, so you can't just like, you know, push past them and like force them to enjoy it and feel better. It doesn't work that way. You have to kind of slowly allow people to come into it on their own terms, which was a space that was held for me by someone when I found my yoga practice. So it's just like carrying that on is what like motivates me to keep them distinct so that they can both like be really good.
I love that. I want to touch on something you brought up, which I loved, where you're a power hot vinyasa, and just because that's what you love, it's also what I love. Minus the hot. I can't do hot. This hair does not do hot. You can't just necessarily take what you love and just copy it and give it to the students that are in front of you. And I think it was my very first teaching interview, without even going into like physically demoing anything, the lead teacher there was like, "What is the most important thing about teaching?" And I was like, "Oh shit." I'm like, "Oh my God." And I thought about it and I answered it exactly how she wanted me to, which got me the job, which I was very happy. But it is never about yourself, ever. You may have the qualifications, you may have the experience, you're the one leading, you have the voice, but it is not about you. It's not even about the poses you like. It is about the people that are in front of you. So every time you walk into a room, you have to look at who is in front of you and hope that what you're offering them is a space that they're going to be comfortable, is going to be a space for exploration, for self-discovery. And that is something that I carry with me in every class. And I remember as a new teacher, right, you want to plan out what you're going to do, and I'd make my sequences and I'd do all this stuff. And one of the things, just so you know, I designed this 60-minute class all about twisting. And I was like, this is going to be a fire class. And in walks this 8-month pregnant woman. And I was like, you can't do twists when you're that pregnant. Great, awesome, what do I do now? And I was new, like early on in kind of my teaching career, and I'm like, pivot, I have to pivot and provide what she is gonna need, because you can't do that. And so it's just a reminder to really look at who is in front of you, and just make sure that hopefully what you're providing them is a safe space. And also to what you all said, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? If you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not giving yourself what you need, there's nothing for you that you're then going to be, able to turn around and provide to the people that are looking to you. So I do also take my personal practice very seriously, because I know the times where I've let it kind of drift, and I'm like, oh, I have too much, like I can't make it to yoga today, or then it's the next day, and it's the next day, and all of a sudden I'm like, I haven't been in a week. I'm not a good person right now. But I know that it affects my teaching. Like I can feel it, and I know in my energy that if I'm disconnected from my practice, that I'm not fully 100% intentionally there and really connected. So it is, hard to switch between the two, but it's beautiful.
It's good to take care of yourself, though. I'm listening to you all, and regardless of the question, it's a lot of like taking care of others, finding moments to take up space because it's not, you know what I mean, always inherently yours to take, right? And as a non-instructor, what I can really, and just as a student of life, what I can really identify with is being queer, you're actually taking care of a lot, making sure everybody else is okay, right? You're not taking up a lot of space a lot of the time. You're making sure your queerness doesn't make people feel uncomfortable. Like, that's a journey, right? And coming through all of that. And we've had such an intense year where space really matters, right? Like, we've been confined to our homes. Or in my case, a 800 square foot apartment with my dog and my wife. And I love her, and it was the best year ever. We got married like right before the pandemic. I'm like, oh wow, this is it. But I'm like, oh my God, this is
Going
taped,
off
right?
script, listen.
I know, I am. No, but it's like space. You guys are really talking about like holding space for your students, holding space for yourself. What outside of maybe what we're talking about in regard, and I really am going off script, I'm sorry. What outside of like what can be mindful movement that isn't necessarily yoga or soul, or, you know, what do you, how can you take up space in different ways that's mindful, that maybe we haven't talked about here today?
Are you thinking more for personal practice?
I'm thinking
just
like, I'll give
suggestions
an
out in the
example
world?
for me.
Yeah.
No one's asking me any questions, but I'll ask myself one. Like for me, like whatever.
Liz, how do you feel?
No, it's okay. It's fine. For me, cooking is mindful movement. Like, I love the process of going to the farmer's market, and I have my like little conversations with the guy I get my zucchini from, and this, and then I come home, and it's really meditative for me. And I typically actually do it alone. Like, don't come in my kitchen, because you probably can't cook as good as me. No, I'm just kidding. But really, that to me is mindful movement. So because you guys are really in this moment of teaching and practicing, are there other things that feel like mindful movement that maybe give you also that recharge?
I'm going to piggyback off of what you said, because what it sounds like is when creativity is inspired,
Sure.
when you feel in the zone, right? Whatever that thing is that feels zoning to you, be it creating art, making food, beach walks, breathing. What I have really adopted as something not only essential in my life, but extremely helpful, is just getting out into the world, because there's been so smaller spaces. I too was in a very small apartment, which was both my yoga studio and my office and my bedroom and my play space and all of the above, right? And so getting out and connecting to nature and taking the simplest step that I possibly can, be it just I got my shoes on and I got out the door, is an opportunity for me to be mindful, to acknowledge that I have a mind that needs to be taken care of. And so reaching for those activities that feel it feels like the easier choice. That feels like, oh, if I have to go to the gym today, that feels like a really big leap. Right. But if I'm like, I can walk to that coffee shop, that's a much more accessible choice. And that gets that momentum going towards feeling good. And I think that is what cultivating mindfulness is choosing the thing that just feels a little bit better. Because it's tough to get to the big things, to always show up and be like, oh, okay, we're gonna fly upside down today. I'm not quite ready for that. You know, I've had to pivot away from my yoga practice because I started creating an imbalance. And so I started finding mindful practices outside of that, because it was too far of a reach for me to go back into yoga and say, this is the thing that makes me feel good. I had to find something else that felt simpler. So, short answer, walking.
Bilateral movement. We love
Exactly.
it.
I guarantee you both of your apartments are not smaller than my apartment. I live in San Francisco.
Fair enough.
So, I guess I have so many suggestions. I could tell you a million things for you to do that could take the place of your workouts, etc. But
No. I want to know what you
exactly,
like to do.
That's
Okay.
exactly what I'm trying to say is that I think what comes down to it, and what I'm learning currently, is it's really about being kind to yourself, right? Like, and in that kindness, finding sort of this fluidity, right? I practice meditation pretty often, and I was a meditation teacher. I forgot to mention that. But we practice this thing called metta, which is a loving kindness practice. And at the end of the day, I kind of just have a moment to myself, look at my day, and ask myself, like, where was I unkind to myself today? How was I unkind to myself? And where can I put and offer up more kindness to myself? And oftentimes it has to do with working out and being physical. I've always had kind of weight fluctuations and just kind of, body image issues. Well, I feel like every gay person has had that at some point in their life. But I think when you find that kindness to yourself, then you're able to allow just the walk to be it enough, right? You're able to let the cooking, the trip to the farmer's market, the dance in the shower, you're able to let that be enough because you're being kind. You're not being so hard on yourself. That's something that I'm learning currently, and I've been putting into practice. Short answer, also walking. Yeah.
So I take walks also, but I walk with my dog every morning, afternoon, and evening, and I usually listen to Abraham Hicks while I do that. And if I'm not doing that, I try to focus on taking in my surroundings. I live in Sherman Oaks, so there's a lot of nature. I try to just really look at the sky, look at the sunset, look at the trees, notice the flowers, that stuff. So walking, I definitely find to be a mindful movement practice that I connect with. But then I think that so many things can be mindful movement practices. So cooking. I've personally gotten into flower arranging as sort of a meditative practice. It's a thing. I go to the store just to pick out my flowers for the week, and I take them home. I put some music on. I spend some time creating some arrangements around the apartment. And more recently, actually, the collective has connected with a business who is this woman. She ships the supplies to do that. She leads flower meditation workshops, and we do them now in South LA every other month. But we do yoga, we have a sound healing, a sound bath, and then we arrange flowers together as a community, and we take them home, and it's a really beautiful practice. It's just super, super nice, and it does feel like a meditation, caring for the flowers, going through those things. So just recognizing that it can be cooking, it can be arranging flowers. For me, I have over 100 plants, and taking care of my plants is definitely a mindful meditative practice for me when I'm just cleaning their leaves or just watering all of them, or whatever it is. All of those things to me are moments where I can inject mindfulness into them and not just be pouring water into my plants, but actually be taking the time out and noticing oh, I'm pouring water into these plants, and what does that represent? What does that what can that look like for me? How does it translate into something else? I feel most moments can be mindful movement moments, if that's your intention. So that's what I try to do.
Two things. One, if you don't follow her on Instagram, you should, because I was so hoping you'd bring up your plants, because I'm so envious, because I don't have a green thumb at all, and if I breathe too hard near a plant, it's going to die. So I envy your plants. They're amazing. But I wanted to kind of touch on bringing it back to yoga. I know, but there's a point. When you practice yoga, it teaches you to be present. right? It teaches you really, truly how to be present. And we live in a world where we are constantly being pulled in every direction. And I know I'm probably not the only one here who's guilty of being on their phone, you know, from the moment my eyes open to the moment my eyes close. And it's a terrible habit. But between jobs and emails and laptops and phones and having to answer and be kind of connected all the time, a mindful, might not be movement, but something that's mindful for me is just the act of disconnecting, of just not looking at a screen for even if it's 10 minutes to go take a walk. So there's your 2 tips. Go to yoga and take a walk. That's basically what we're going with. But even I do that where I'm just like, okay, I need 5 minutes away from this, and just disconnecting for that little bit of time does help me bring back, you know, that sense of connection and being mindful and noticing how beautiful the sky is and noticing how beautiful the flowers are, or noticing something that has probably been there the whole time that I didn't see before. And so for me, I try hard. It's not an easy task, and I'm sure we're all guilty of it in some way. But just mindfulness to me is there's this beautiful element of disconnecting and focusing on really, truly what is in front of you.
I love that. I'm also glad I went off script because boy, oh boy, I want to go to that flower arranging class immediately. I've learned a lot from all of you, and you've given us so much, so thank you. I would love to end with, not to ask you for more, but how, given the state of the world, which is, it's heavy and it's a lot, and it feels never ending, which can feel quite hopeless. What advice would you give to your friends, to yourself, to your students on how to stay mindful through difficult times? I know it's a big one, but
I can go first.
yeah.
My thing is protecting my peace, like whatever that looks like. I don't really watch the news. I'm very quick to mute key terms on social media that might make me like super unhappy or uncomfortable or sad. Like I don't want to see that stuff. I'm not researching the latest like current events, because all the current events like are not giving what I would like to see. So I just really am mindful about what I consume, whether it be on social media. I tell people like, oh, I would rather not have a conversation about that actually, and I'm okay with saying that. It's sometimes awkward or uncomfortable, but I would rather not hear about certain things or talk about certain things. And that doesn't mean that I don't keep myself aware, because as someone who does a lot of community work, I have to be sort of aware of what's happening. But it also means that I don't have to give a lot of energy to the things that make me feel bad or bring me down. And I tell that to my friends all the time, like, set the boundary, you know, turn off the news channel or whatever. If I see a blog page on Instagram, I block it. I don't care if they're posting something I like or something I don't like. Like, I don't want to interact with that. I know, like, the energy it cultivates, and I don't like it. So I'm just very mindful of always protecting my peace and taking in only energy that will feed me and not that will deplete me. And I tell my friends to, like, really honor themselves by doing the same thing. I think especially when there's so much going on, it can feel like every time you turn around, there's a new thing to be sad about or upset about or feel down about. And I think reminding ourselves that, like, well-being is our natural state is really helpful. Like all of the bad stuff that's happening is not the natural state. That's why it feels so bad. That's not how it's supposed to be. It's not like how it needs to be for us. And really focusing on, like, well, how do I want the world to be? How do I want it to look? How do I want people to be to me? And how can I exhibit that so that it comes back to me? So
I'm going to tag on to that. A lot of our works and our jobs and just our interactions require us to be aware of much of the things that make us feel not so good, right? And so if you do not have the option to necessarily be as filtered or selective with the information and the influence that comes towards you, I think the reminder to know that you can still choose what to focus on is extremely powerful, because that focus will bring more of it, right? So where you put your attention, It's very law of attraction. Yes, yes, yes. But I'm in that boat going downstream at full speed. And it's just because I found it to be true, right? So the ability to choose just the lighter feeling thought, the better feeling thought, and that is what mindfulness allows for us to do, is because you can step out of the noise for long enough to be like, oh, I've got the choice to love in this moment. Be it love myself, be it love someone else, be it love my fellow man, be it, love all those impacted by the awful things that are shown and happening in the world. So just the reminder that where you turn your attention, that's always your power, and no one can take that away from you.
I love that. That's so true. We always have the ability to choose what we want to focus, where we want to put our energy. For me, I'm a Pisces and a Cancer, so I'm 2 water signs, which means I cry every day
Yes.
of my life.
Let it flow.
Let it flow. And so for me, you might not cry as much as I do, but there is something beautiful about a release, whatever that release may be. And lots of times life is very heavy. There's a lot of heaviness that we hear, whether or not we want to, or whether or not we can separate ourselves from it. It's there. And I think that there's something really powerful about finding a healthy way to let it go. So whether that's crying, or maybe it's a physical release, maybe that for you is going to yoga or going to the gym or going for a walk or a run or whatever it is. We really need to make sure that we are releasing that heavy energy that we're taking in, because if not, it's just going to stay inside of us, and that's not going to do us any good. So I think that it's really, truly powerful to find what works for you, where you can, let go of that really heavy energy. And if you're like me, you can just cry every day and then carry on. I'm great at it. You just cry and then you just keep going. That's how life works. But whatever it is that allows you that space to just feel and let go and release, whether it's your own emotions or the negativity that is surrounding us, or the heaviness of the news, or so on and so forth. So
I'm going to bring it back to something that we talked about at the beginning, which is community, like the ability to be around and supported by like-minded people. I have a lot of friends who are like very politically active, and I would consider even myself an activist, and my friends as such. And it's so important to find the people that you connect with on specific issues. A lot of time, and for me, a lot of those people were people that I was practicing mindful movement with. It just worked out like that. A law of attraction thing, I think, too. I think once you find that group of people that can really be there for you, that can empower you, that can embolden you to act on whatever it is you choose to act on, it can be really powerful. And it's not even about it. Of course, you have to protect yourself, and you have to protect and have boundaries. It's about increasing your ability to, your window of tolerance, I guess, is the term I would like to use. Your window of tolerance, like what things do I need to be able to do so I can hold what I need to hold? And those people around you will help you do that, the people that will be there to support you. So I think community, we bring it back to community, it always comes back there.
I love that. Thank you all so much. And thank you for having me. This was lovely. It really was. This was beautiful. Thank you.